You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hey folks, Lance here. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite True Encounter Cryptid Therapy podcast show, Monster 911. Have you had any sightings or encounters that you want to talk about? Call our toll-free number, as stated at the start of the video, at 1-866-306-8085, or you can head over to the website at www.monster911.com and fill out your details of what happened in the contact portion of the website. Now, I've got a good episode for you guys today. It's a long one, but I'm sure you will be absorbed from the start to finish. Our guest details his experience while working a security job that he thought would be like any other, peaceful and solitary. But what unfolded couldn't be further from that. Much to our guest's confusion, the local landowner warned him of what he called the bovine monster. He assumed he was joking until later that night. This was a very thought-provoking interview and discussion, and I'm really thankful for my guest being so open and talking about his experience with me. Follow closely and learn what you need to know and who not to talk to should you ever have an encounter while in the woods, because believe it or not, folks, you're never truly alone. So, you're out of...
Yeah, I'm out. I worked out in Ohio as a private security contractor.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
And
if you don't mind, before we get going, typically I leave names out and specific locations if it has to do with a home or place of employment. You don't have to give I mean, I scrub through and I do that just as confidentiality. But do you mind if I record for a show?
no, I don't care.
Okay. So
I just hope it's.
Oh,
you
it
know.
doesn't. You know, a lot of people. I don't judge whether something is more terrifying than the other. I just want to know what happened. When I put shows on, it's kind of in queue. I don't look at every show. I just, whatever the show is, it is. And so
Right.
I just want to know, more importantly, people want to know what happened, what was the context of what happened, because there is a small percentage of people that listen that really, really want to know because they've had their own encounter, and they just and then there's people that's had their own encounter that they don't want to talk. So if they hear something very similar to what happened to them, they open up, and when they do that, that sharing, they feel better about it, but they don't know yet because they're worried about how someone's going to view them, if they're going to judge them, and that's what we try to get across, is that we don't do that. We've had our own experiences. We've been told we're crazy and that we're just seeing things, even within our own family. So we understand totally.
Right.
So yeah, I'm always curious on every encounter, what happened, and if everybody was okay. And we stay in contact with a lot of these people that have become friends all across the country. And
Right.
So yeah, we have a lot of sightings up and around your area. I don't have too many from the area, but it's mainly bordering states. But you know, they're all over. So I was happy to hear when I saw your area code that you called. So I wanted to quickly call you back.
Right. Well, I'm beginning to believe there's some around here myself.
Well, and it's very likely. And you know, it's kind of hard to judge initially. We always talk about remote areas where there's water and food sources, plant and animal. But remarkably, it's even hard to judge that. I mean, you
Right.
could easily say remote areas away from people, but that's really not a true statement, what I'm finding out, because you could actually have activity in a bedroom community or in an alleyway near a national forest, or just a small patch of woods that it would be the most unlikely place you would think of, and that's where they would be. So it's really hard to place initial judgment on an area. It is surprising how close these creatures are to golf courses, city parks, public places that may not be like downtown, of course, but just on the perimeter of woods and town, alleyways. Right. And so I've learned not even to judge that, because you really never know.
Right. Well, I know there was 2 sightings just northwest of me, about 25 miles here. One 2008 and one in 2011. I do know that. It scared one 2011, I think, scared a family pretty good. And the BFRO came down. I think it was. But
that's interesting, because it's very much like parts of Kansas and Oklahoma. Of course, you've got a lot more woods, I think, here and there, but as far as you have farmland, you have hardwoods and creeks and rivers and lakes. It's a very, very pretty state, and
right.
So you definitely have a great habitat for these
right.
All kinds of critters to run around.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, and I'll be quiet.
Oh, that's all right. I know recently I found some tree breaks that kind of got my attention, because they were, my grandson and I about 4 weeks ago were walking up in the timber, and they're about, I don't know, 50 feet apart. I think I got some pictures of them, but there was 2 tree breaks, the same type of tree. That's what got my attention. And about 5 years ago, I found some prints, which I didn't even think about taking a picture of then, just west of there, down in the creek. And I wish I took some prints. But I took some prints of, I guess, I did take prints of looked like a rather large wolf come through there. But that was the only pictures I took down there. But I'm beginning to think there's some that travel through here, though, through this part of the state, because we live in a rural community. There's pretty much timber around this area. A lot of deer hunters and whatnot. And that area I was talking about, where I seen them tracks about 5 years ago, there's a lot of deer travel through there. It's called Creek. And but if you want to know about the Ohio thing, that's more, I guess, more interesting, or I don't know.
No, just please, you can start anywhere you like, and it's always important to get the context of what's
right.
going on in an area. And so even if it's not a sighting that personally you had or a family member, it's really interesting, I think, for people to know about the area and your neighbors. If you know of a neighbor that had some strange things going on, or things happen. I mean, in general, everything doesn't have to be cryptid in nature, of course, but
right.
Things just happen. Coyotes and wild dogs and feral hogs and whatnot, and people steal stuff. So it doesn't always have to be because a cryptid did it, but
right.
But it is important to kind of get the context of the area, the history. So, yeah, you can just start anywhere.
Well, I'll start with Ohio, because that really got my attention, and
sure,
more interesting, into looking for this stuff, because I've seen a lot of things in my area where I live compared to what I've seen in Ohio and what happened one night. But out in Ohio, I worked on the pipeline as security. And but there was nobody out there, no lights, no power. I had no electricity. So I was pretty much on my own, just sitting out there. And I'd seen different things out there. I'd go out there for 2 weeks at a time and then come home and go back out. And this was last year, this incident. But I'd always sit outside my truck in my lawn chair at night. And like I said, I'd sit from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was still light when I'd get there, and every so often I'd catch something, I don't know, going through the timber, because there was thick timber out there. Yeah. And I call it a mountain. They call it big hills, but to me it's a mountain that I sit on top of. And it's about 25 to 30 miles south of, down by, out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I've heard of that place, but I've never been there. I'll have to do a Google on that.
But the pipeline was coming through there. Oh, and one thing, the guy that owned all the property, he's like 83 years old, and he's lived there since he was born. It's been in the family for so many years, all the way back to his great-grandparents. And prior to this incident, I met him. He was out there on an ATV, and we were talking and whatnot. And just before he left, he told me, I think it was bovine. He called it the bovine monster. Said beware of it.
Bovine.
But bovine.
Interesting.
But he said it usually never comes up quite this far. It just stays way over there down that ridge. That was east of me. And I don't know. I don't know how to go with this story, but one night, I guess, I was sitting out there, and like I said, I've seen things out there before, but never quite. It was like they disappear. I mean, I know that doesn't make sense or sound right, but
no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen things kind of on my peripheral vision, and
yeah,
I'll glance over there, and I'll just be real still, and I'll look, and I don't see any movement, and then so I'm telling myself, you just saw something, Lance. You're just kind of your mind. And so I've seen a lot of that while deer hunting and hiking, and
right.
I'll just, when there's no wind, any movement will just, your mind instantly goes there, your eyes, and I've caught that a lot. And I'm just kind of like, you just play it off like,
right.
Yeah, you're just kind of hyped up here. Let's just keep moving on.
Right. There would be different things, even prior to this incident I'm going to tell you. Sometimes I'd hear these yells or screams that sound like a woman yelling, but with a deeper tone to it, I guess. And I tried recording some of them, and I'd hear tree breaks. And, that's a funny thing. There's one road into this place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that would relieve me for the day shift would come in about 5:30. And anyway, on my way out, I'd find trees across the road. Now there's one road in, but he'd never say anything about a tree being across the road. And I'd get out and move it or whatever was laying across the road. And I always found that interesting.
How big were these trees?
Oh, they were probably, as far as thickness, probably about 6 inches, maybe more, a little more. About maybe 12 inches around, somewhere, something like that, maybe. And they weren't a lot of dead trees either. A lot of them were green. But I found that interesting because it was like something put it there, because you can almost see drag marks. I mean, it's still a little dark at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Sure.
But there's the roads they're dirt roads, rock roads. They're and I'm talking like river rock.
Very hard to get a print off of, in other words.
Right. And they were made by the pipeline to come in. And I don't know. I just never could figure out how the trees would get there, but he didn't have a problem getting in, if you understand what I mean by that.
Well, it's a very common, and I don't want to say I'm the expert because I'm not, but I've interviewed enough people, and we've actually had this happen to us, where you go in to a very narrow road passage that, whether it's being used or not being used, but the area is off the grid, so to speak, and you go in, and then when you come out, you've got trees across the road. And there's no other cars that came in behind you. There's no people that you heard or met. Nobody talking. There's no hunters. And then that happened. So what we're finding is that this is kind of an indication. It's kind of a signal to us that they don't want you there. You need to stay out of this area. Now, I'm not trying to read into, a lot of people, will say, Lance, how do you know that? Well, I don't absolutely know that. I'm willing to say that. But to me, it's kind of like anything. It's a very clear message that that don't go down this road. I don't want you back here. And for whatever reason, either that's where they tend to harbor and live predominantly, or that's where they hunt, or that's their hunting ground. Who knows? But I mean, it'd be no different than if I put furniture in your hallway of your home. I don't want you to go down the hallway. It's kind of the same premise in my mind. So it could mean something else, but to me, that's kind of what it is. I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday that in West Virginia who had the very same thing happen. He'll go in, except he had boulders like 3 foot in diameter put in the road coming back. And he went up a road. They come back down the road that same day. No one was behind them. And there's a 3 foot, 3 by 3 by 3 kind of boulder right there in the middle of the road. And now he's willing to say, okay, did this roll down the hill and just happen to stop in the middle of the road? But they looked around, and that particular rock is not anywhere in that area. It's usually found down the hill in the creek bottoms.
Right.
It's not up the hill. So, and it's a different kind of stratus of rock. So he's looking at this, and he was trying to see if it had a path of rolling. There was nothing. So
I'll be darned.
It was one of those things where you scratch your head, you go, huh. But being that there's a high level of sightings in the area, and that there has been on previous occasions where there has been trees falling across the road, that he just thought that, well, the possibility of one of these Bigfoot putting this here to say, I want you out of here, is very likely. So anyway, I don't mean to deviate there, but only to say that that's not an odd characteristic of doing that.
Right. Yeah, I found that odd because, like I say, the guy coming in had no problem. But I would start thinking it was like, well, maybe it's trying to pin me in. I don't know, or something. But because, to be honest with you, a lot of times when that happened, the tree across the road, I'd sit in my truck till the light was coming through the timber. I wouldn't get out because I didn't. I kind of wondered if I was getting set up by somebody, or just something happened.
Well,
I know that sounds kind of odd, but
no. I mean, that's another point that you bring up that's very valid. Is that again, I'm saying that I told you that example just a second ago because either it's kind of stay out of my area, or is it an ambush point?
Right.
Because you got to get out to move it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a very good point.
Yeah, because I remember the Gulf War, they would block stuff on us. And, you get out to move stuff, and next thing you know, boom. But, anyway, that's besides the point. Well, to get to what happened out there, like I said, I'd sit out there in my lawn chair outside the truck, and watch what I could in the dark. I had a spotlight anyway. But one night I was sitting out there and I kept hearing something, and it kept, kind of drawing my attention one way. And then all of a sudden I was so scared. I don't get scared much, but I got scared. So I don't know what it was, but I got scared. And I threw my lawn chair in the back of the truck. I climbed in my truck, rolled the windows up, locked the doors, and set 2 pistols in my lap. And I don't know what it was. I tried to see. I had a light bar on my truck, so I kind of turned my truck where I could see across where my attention kept going. And it wouldn't quite shine across there because it's a long ways across them pipeline right-of-ways.
Mm-hmm.
And but I shut off my lights, and the moon is way up there sitting on top of that mountain. There was a bright moon anyway coming through the timber, and every once in a while it was like I could see something big and black standing there or whatever it was. And anyway, it would just stand there. It was odd because it really wouldn't move. I mean, every once in a while you'd see it. It looked like it was moving, but it would just stand there.
Was this out in front of you or to the side of you?
It'd be to my, kind of at an angle, to the side, to the right side, because when I moved my truck back, it was off to the, it'd be off to the right, because I was sitting way up on the high point. And
now you're part of a security detail that basically overlooks these oil well sites just for people not going in there and stealing this equipment because it's very, very expensive, and so people don't go in there and destroy anything either. Is that right?
Right, yeah, because it was a pipeline going through, and they would leave machinery out there, and they were waiting on a drilling permit to go under a road in a cemetery down the mountainside.
Oh, okay.
So there was nobody there but myself, and like I said, there's no power, no lights, no nothing out there. You have basically nothing except for yourself and your truck. And I don't know, it was an odd evening. Then after that, things kind of picked up a little bit around there during the night. Like one day or morning, I got out of the truck and was walking around a little bit, and there's kind of a hillside it would have been to my left side, north. And anyway, the gravel was kind of loose up there a bit, and I found a print of something. And I took a picture of it, but I lost it because I got a new phone about January. And but there was just odd stuff out there happening. I'd hear noises like somebody, because they had some machinery out there that it sounded like somebody take their hand or something and hit the machinery, which would be about, 400 yards away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, in that night, I got a dent in my hood of my truck.
Oh, what?
A dent. That night, when I kept watching whatever that was, I don't know I think it was a rock, but there's no tree cover over you because it's all open through there. And all of a sudden, my hood of my truck, there was a ping. And that morning there was a dent in there, where something small and heavy hit it.
Like a rock.
Yeah, like a rock. Yeah, I about forgot about that. And I found that interesting. Anyway, I'll tell you what, it startled me.
Well, here's the thing. If we just use a little bit of logic here, I mean, I know there's bears. I know you've got
Yeah.
the same kind of large game and small game, just about what we do here in Oklahoma. And
Right.
you definitely have a ton of deer.
Yeah.
And to throw a rock takes an opposing thumb. And
Yeah.
last time I checked, bears don't have that.
No.
Deer don't have that. Hogs
No.
don't have that. And just keep going on down the animal kingdom line. They don't have that.
Right.
That's, in Oklahoma, in Texas, and abroad. So if you think about that alone, just the act of throwing something, it was either someone or something. Now,
Right.
I doubt it was someone implying a human being, because what business would they have out in a remote location messing with a security guard who's armed?
Right.
That's kind of not a smart thing to do.
No.
So I'm going to eliminate that and say it was something.
Yeah.
And with all the other sounds that you heard and the stories of that area, that's bizarre. So you would hear something being slapped, like a piece of equipment out there, as well as having...
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, because there was, and you'd find things moved. Besides the trees in the road, me going out, you'd find things pulled up on that right of way because they had a big dirt road through there. And maybe the next day when I come into work, because I always went out there 2 to 3 hours early, and they had asked me, "Hey, did you move them rocks or something over there during the night for any reason?" I said, "No." And I don't know. They'd find things out there moved around, like they almost lost the trailer, got pushed out. Just odd things like that would happen out there. They had a big rock pile up there where there used to be homesteaders, I guess. I don't know, early 1800s, 1700s. And plus the Indians, Native Americans, they had burial grounds up in there because it was rock piles. And matter of fact, the guy that owned the property, the old guy, he would get upset because the rock piles would be moved out there. But they'd just find things moved around out there that shouldn't be moved, because part of it, I couldn't even move it anyway, some of the items that were that big.
Well, I'm sure that they were thinking, now, wait a minute, here we have a security guy here. He's not moving it. He can't move it. I mean, what's he going to be doing moving it? What purpose? It's still here. So what's going on? Have you ever been questioned about that? If they're saying, like,
I was questioned a couple different times. They had one area down below me, they had a trailer disappear somehow. And I got several calls about that.
Say that again?
A trailer disappeared.
Like a mobile home trailer, or like a pull hitch, like a single axle trailer, or what size?
Yeah, single axle. But it had got pushed somehow down into the timber. They eventually found it, or they'd have things come up missing a lot, different things. Just a lot of things happen out there. And I talked to that a couple of days later. I finally got to talk to the guy that owned the property, and he finally explained to me what the bovine monster was. He said it's lived there since he was a kid. And there's some old mine shafts, I guess, down towards, highway, I think. and that's on his property because he owns thousands of acres up there. And he said he thinks that's where they live. Nobody's allowed to go in there or anything.
And where is this place again?
It's down by, and it's called, I think, Highway. I think that's what it's called, if I remember correctly, because there's a creek, which is actually the creek he says that monster, I call it Bigfoot, doesn't ever come across, is what he says. He says it's down the area where, matter of fact, he said, who was it? George Washington had camped down there back in the Revolutionary War years ago. That some Indians had lived down in there or something. But he would he'd cut from daybreak to sunset wood, and he said there's a lot of times he'd just have to leave the area. He'd be busy working, and all of a sudden he'd just know that something was there, and it was time for him to go.
Just that instinct, kind of like
Yeah.
you were describing when you said you had set your chair on the outside, and then you just had this feeling.
Yeah.
Was it an instant going back? Was it a feeling that we're just going to say here that it was probably this creature or creatures, very close. And that feeling, I always tell people, the mind wants to try and understand why you're feeling that way. You're asking yourself questions of the physiology of your body, but I always tell people, don't try to figure it out. If your body and your mind, or if you're a God-fearing man and you say the Holy Spirit or whatever it is telling you need to get to safety, I tell people to act on that. Worry about trying to figure it out later. Just act on it, because I believe that God put a sense of an innate ability to protect us, and it's something that it's kind of indescribable. It's just a overwhelming feeling like you're being watched. You need to get to safety. You need to leave out of there. You need to do whatever to protect you and someone else that's with you. So you said that you felt kind of overcome with fear, like, I got to do something. I can't be right here.
Yeah. I mean, I have PTSD, but when let's put it this way, if you've been in certain situations in the Army or the military, like the Gulf, you get this feeling. It's like a gut thing. Mm-hmm. But this one here was very overwhelming. I mean, it about ate me up. But it wasn't the actual first time I got it out there, because a lot of times I would just walk down that right away, and all of a sudden I'd stop, and it was like, no, I can't go any farther. I got to get back to my truck. And I told that, where I was talking about that older gentleman before that owned the property, he told me that thing never come up that far. And then he got to thinking, I guess he said, well, it's getting deer season. So that may be why he's up here.
Well, the 2 months, or rather the 2 seasons that tends to be the most active, at least that I can tell from doing these interviews now for coming up almost 2 years, is October, November, and March, April. Somewhere in the spring, somewhere in the fall, and in the spring. In the spring, and now there's probably a dozen reasons why, but one of the reasons, or the possibilities, is that in the fall we are surmising that excuse me, we are thinking that that's their mating season.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And now there's quite a few people that have said that that is so, or there's been channels way before ours that have said that they have, wildlife departments don't want to divulge a lot of information. They're told that anything cryptid, they are to ignore the recognition that these things exist. So usually there's two reports. There's the report that goes into the public record, and then there's a report of what really happened. So that's why I tell people, if you have an incident, unless it is life-threatening to yourself, I probably wouldn't call the wildlife department because even though that's your natural inclination, being in the outdoors, they are told that they are not to recognize this. And the other issue with that is that they will call other government agencies that will be at your house knocking on your door to basically interview you and almost interrogate you. They want to know who you told, what you think it was, and how adamant you are at saying what you saw.
Right.
And if you're very adamant about what you saw, like, no, I saw a Bigfoot, I'm telling you. No, sir, you didn't. What we're saying, you saw a bear. That's what you saw. No, I'm telling you. No, sir, you're not understanding. I'm telling you, you saw a bear, and that's the way it's going to be. Are we clear? And that happens all the time. I'm telling you. And the reason why we don't hear too much about it is because these people are frightened to say anything. They have been forewarned. And so, go ahead.
That reminds me of an incident in 1980 out of Fort Carson, Colorado, when I was stationed there.
Go ahead. Please tell us.
There was some guys on perimeter duty. We'd go up Agony for training up in the mountains. And a couple guys had said they'd seen something. And I don't know, there was quite a bit going on after that. But I remember our platoon sergeant had a meeting one day, and he told us guys, he said, if you guys ever see anything, just keep it to yourself. Don't say a word about it. Don't let anybody know. There's going to be people coming seeing you. And
yep.
I never seen nothing myself out there, but these two guys were on perimeter duty up there on an exercise we were on. It was close to the sand hills. And I guess they had all kinds of people see them or talk to them and stuff, but I never forget the platoon sergeant told us, just keep it to ourselves, don't say a word if you ever see anything. And
yeah,
that's just the way we were about that.
Well, and that gets to an incident, a show that I did. I narrated it, but a gentleman, he lives in Utah now. He was stationed in Fort Sill down in Oklahoma near Lawton, Altus area. And this was years ago. And he was on patrol. They had these, I don't know the proper military terms. I've never been, so forgive me here for a second. They basically were running some nighttime drills. And it was, in Oklahoma, the weather, right now, it's cold right now. We got snow on the ground. But typically our winters have been really mild lately. But way back in the day, I mean, it is cold. That wind just bites you, just go right through you. So
like it is here today.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was one of those nights they were doing these drills. Well, in between these, they had these huge, I believe he said it was howitzers. And they had them in kind of a big U, a huge kind of a U shape. But it was oh my God, it was probably a quarter mile in length. So there was two guys patrolling this. He took one side, the other guy took the other, and then they'd make their rounds. And then they'd come back they had to report in like on the hour.
Right.
And they were basically out there, so you didn't have any local yahoos go out there, get drunk, and spray paint tanks and whatever, and so they were just out there, and they had a fire barrel. They were just stoking it with wood and stuff and just keep it going, and they get up there, just kind of warm their hands and their body, get some coffee, and go back out. And he had a close encounter with a Bigfoot, and it was close, and it frightened him to death. And he went back, and he told his commanding officer at this at the bivouac they have, and so he said, I don't want to hear that story again. And if you ever tell an officer, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. I don't want to ever hear that again. Are we clear? He said, but and he said, I'm telling you right now, that's just be quiet with that.
Right. Yeah, because they don't want to hear that stuff. I mean, why they hide it, I don't understand, but people should know about this stuff. I mean, I used to never really believe in it. I know when I was about, 11 years old, down by DeSoto, Missouri, Camp Neotaz, it's a church camp, down by the Big Muddy. We'd seen something go across there. It was at night, and the moon was coming down through. We were up on a kind of a ledge, and it didn't take very many steps to go across the river, I know that. But there's things out there. And
oh yeah, there's a lot out there that more than just Bigfoot and Dogman type creatures. We're just there's just a lot out there we just don't know. And
right.
To say that there's not this creature, to say that, well, I believe in Bigfoot, but I don't believe in blah, 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 blah. Well, that's kind of a silly statement.
Yeah.
Because, if a person hasn't, I read something, my son and I were talking about this, that 95% of the oceanic floors are undiscovered.
Very true.
95%. So, what percent of the land masses of the earth is undiscovered? I'm not sure. But you can't tell me every person, or there has been a person, walk every inch of the land masses we have.
Right.
And know that, well, this doesn't exist, but that does. And this doesn't exist, but that does. Well, you don't know that. So, it's kind of a very bold statement to say when that's really not true. There's so much more out there we don't know. There's different species of animals being found all the time. So,
right.
And the biggest mystery that people have is that, well, we don't have a body of a Bigfoot. That's why. Well, that's probably not a true statement either. See, people.
I think they have.
Of course they have. Yep, they have. Here's the thing. There's other agencies that are going to intercept. If you have one and you're bragging about it, you can bet that social media is constantly being monitored. YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, you name it, it's being monitored all the time.
Right.
And so that's what these people do. You and I, we get up, get some coffee, and get going to work. Well, they do too. They get up, get their coffee, and they start monitoring and surveilling an area.
Yeah.
Now, how they know what they know, it's a mystery. That's their job, and they have a lot more expensive toys than you and I do with no budget.
Right. Yeah, that's why it took me so long to call you back, to be honest. Because I've been monitored before for different things, which would go back to security. But yeah, I think they do, because I don't know whether they're afraid of panic from the people, if they actually know that there's something there, or it's just something they're trying, or I don't know, maybe just something they don't want us to know.
Well, that's it at the core. It is a intelligent being, not an animal, and that this being is been here a long time. They cannot, and this is just me talking, I don't know this for a fact, I'm just a guy that puts things together, but
Yeah.
they've been here a long time. How long, we don't know, and the government has been very good about covering things up, back starting in the 50s.
Right.
And so they've had a lot of wisdom and expertise in getting really good at what they do. And the electronic toys they have nowadays is a lot more sensitive and tiny and very covert in listening to what we say and what we do. So things have definitely amped up with technology age. So I think the reason why they're so secret about this, and these agencies that we're talking about, we don't know how many are involved. We just call them agencies, and for lack of a better term, we just call them the men in black. Their primary mode of operandi is secrecy. So even the watchers are being watched, and they are basically committed to a code of silence and secrecy. And the reason why they keep this up, or they keep this information of these creatures silent, is because these are not dumb animals. They are beings that are highly intelligent. They're extremely strong, powerful. They have a language, and they can thrive and survive in the wilderness. They don't need us to cook for them or shoot deer for them, or put some food in a bowl at the edge of the trees. That's not how it works. And so I don't think they have a very good handle on it. So what they feel, and again, I'm just putting things together, is that these agencies feel that they're protecting us as American citizens from the truth that if we get wind that these are really, truly real, then we might panic. It might go against all of the Christianity faith. We're going to have chaos in the streets. And also, to a certain degree, but a much larger, is that think of all, if someone finally said, if the government said, we've known about these creatures that are real, they have over time kidnapped people in national parks, state parks, and abroad, they've been around a long time. Do you know how much revenue loss we would have in our national parks, state parks, fishing, hunting, hiking, biking, camping industry? I mean, people would throw a fit, and then people would sue the United States government for their loved one being kidnapped when they've known about these all along. So it's besides just one answer of why they're keeping it from us, it's almost like a multifactorial type of reasoning. It's basically to protect us. It's to preserve our faith. I mean, I don't want to reach out and say that's one of them, but I'm just trying to put things together. They want to protect the bread and butter of Americana. So that's why they talk about it. And if it was just a dumb animal, why not call the fish and game and let them trap it and be done with it? Well, because it's a lot more than that. It goes deeper. So you have agencies that represent the Defense Department, national security, and that's why they look at this a lot different. It's just not a wildlife issue. So that's just my 2 cents. I could be way off in some areas, but I think somewhere in the middle lies the truth on what you're saying and what I'm saying. And they've known about these for a long time. That's why they don't really talk about it. You'll never see it in the news. And what we just got through saying, I think they have been killed, shot, or natural causes, whatever that is, and people have found them, and they tell the people, you need to be quiet on this, and they more or less threaten people and use bully tactics for them to be quiet so the rest of us don't know. And we view it like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Right.
Oh, you saw Bigfoot. You saw Bigfoot. Yep, you're one of those people. I've heard about you.
Yeah. But, ever since this incident in Ohio, I mean, I've been researching or looking into things about it. And I find there's a lot of different things, whether it's true or not, I don't know. People have come forward that's been in the military who went out searching areas for them as a directive or for the military, different groups. And they say they've killed some, and some, had gotten away. But they did it for the government. Like, a Martin. Was it Denny Martin? A boy who had been disappeared, and they couldn't figure out why Special Forces came out searching. They didn't intermingle with the search teams. They went on their own. And I guess somebody had said they'd seen something moving through the timber carrying something on its shoulder.
Yes.
And but I see where people are coming forward anyway and talking about these things that has a lot to do with the government. And I find that interesting because they're actually saying, recognizing this thing, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or a dog man. But I don't know. I'm not sure what to say, except for I guess they just don't promote it, that it's actually there. I've talked to other people. I was working on that pipeline before, and they told me they seen things out there and had things happen. And then you got the family, 2 sightings. That was, 2011. They were deer hunting. A man with his 2 children, in the teens, I guess, and they ran into something. And they talked about the smell, how it... Because I went in and finally found a report on it, the hidden report, and how it went from side to side just standing there, kind of moving. And he knew it was time to go. He told his kids, let's go. We got to leave. And in the same area almost, maybe a couple miles difference, in 2008 there was another sighting. Same thing, deer hunting. And they'd seen something move up to over by Sorrento, Illinois. There's a lot of hills, almost like Missouri, and rock cliffs and stuff. Not big ones, but they're there. And up on a ridge, they seen something moving and heard a yell. And they kind of left the area pretty quick. But they won't talk about it, because I know one guy who claims it to be, he lives over Sorrento area. There's a lot of area over there where a lot of people don't go. It's thick timber and stuff. And he claims that there's one that lives around his home, because he lives way off on a dead-end road way out in the sticks. But he hears noises out there. And I think he had a dog disappear once, if I remember correctly. That he'll hear like people chattering out there. And he's talked about that. I'm a retired, and he worked in with me, so a lot of times when you sit and you don't have a lot to do,
right?
And you just start talking. You just start talking about things, and one thing leads to another. Mm-hmm. And he started telling me about what goes on around his home, how things that disappear, or they're always hearing. It sounds like somebody in the woods, timber, and I think if I remember correctly, he told me the I never say this right, BRFO.
Yes.
What's his name? Moneymaker?
Matt Moneymaker?
Yeah. Which I'm sorry, but I shouldn't say this, but I don't believe in a lot of what they do. But
well,
has been out there searching the area.
A lot of that, the problem why a lot of serious Bigfooters, investigators, researchers don't really like the BFRO is that, you know, it's more drama hype for television, and you'll always be looking for Bigfoot. They never find Bigfoot. Otherwise, there'd be one episode called Found Bigfoot, and that would be it. And it's just not looked at as a serious investigative group.
Well, there's a guy I used to, after that incident in Ohio, I started watching, a Robert Dodson.
Yes, he's since passed.
Yeah, he passed away.
Yep.
But some of his stuff, I kind of liked what he did. But, I mean, I can't vouch for the guy, whether he was, upstanding or on it, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Reputable.
Right.
And I got to watching him a bit, and then I came across your guys's, and I've been watching yours here recently quite a bit, and it just got me thinking, now, wait a minute. These people are coming forward talking about it, because my family thinks I'm nuts. And, you'd be out having a beer with a friend, you start talking about it, and they'll look at you and say, "Oh, you need 2 more beers, don't you?" Or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's kind of a taboo subject. I mean, I've spoke about it enough with my wife, and my background. I'm not on any medication. I've never been on medication. My wife and I have college backgrounds. We have postgraduate degrees, and I'm heavy in the sciences and biological sciences and neurological sciences. So
right.
I'm an everyday guy like you. I mean, everybody kind of has their specialty of their occupation. That's what I love. I love talking to people regardless of what we do for a living. And I grew up very rural. My brothers and I grew up in the backwoods of southeast Oklahoma. My wife is a very, very logical person, but I talk about it often, and she doesn't. She's never seen anything or heard anything, but she listens to me and she knows how I am, so she knows that there's something going on. She just doesn't want to think about it because it's too frightening to think about the reality of it. And then I have a brother and a dad that they don't know what to think about it, and they've been in the woods as much as we have, but I can't explain why they haven't had any. Now my dad has heard certain sounds that we have had. And we know what it is, but he's still on the fence, not knowing what to think.
Yeah.
And so,
have you heard a lot of whistles?
Oh yeah, that's what we've got going on right now at deer camp. I've got our camp is set up down in southeast Oklahoma. I'll be going to this weekend, and
really?
Yes. And the last 2 years at the same camp, we had 2 tree crashes near the camp. Not limb breaks, like timber type of the whole tree. And,
right.
And then we've had, 2 years ago, we had a siren call and whooping sounds, and they were loud.
Were loud?
And yes, I kicked myself for not having a recorder going. And then last season, we had the tarp on my tent. When I put up my tent, I build a canopy over the entrance of the tent, so it allows another area that when you get out of your tent, you can cook, you can have a stove ready, and you can warm that area up to get dressed.
Right.
And so we have a tarp as a door, and we had our tarp lifted up on the tent in wee hours of the morning, and it happened 2 nights in a row. And now it's not the wind either. The tarp was literally lifted up off the ground and then placed back. So we had that happen, and then we had whistles last year. We have whistling again going on right now, but it's a little calm right now. I don't know what it is, but it's been kind of calm. But where we camp, everybody's in their trailers, and when you're in a trailer and you can't hear in the first place, it's really hard to hear all of the little sounds of the night. So that's why I'll just use a flicker flame on a heater, but I don't want anything else going. I want to be able to hear everything.
Right. Do you believe they mimic other animals?
Oh, absolutely they do.
There was things I heard out there that almost sound like an example, say an owl, but it didn't quite sound like it. Or
yeah, it's like a bad version of an owl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
things like that.
Who?
Yeah.
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 It's not whoo. It's not the owl sound that you would typically hear. I've heard there's been sounds of owls, coyotes, but it's not a coyote. And
yeah, because I'd hear coyotes out there, but it didn't quite sound like, a real coyote like you hear around here, because we have a lot of coyotes here. But out there in Ohio, the guy told me there wasn't that many coyotes up in there because there was 2 black bears up there. And I never seen the bears, but he said they stayed all down this one area pretty much. But I'd hear coyote. What I thought, anyway, could been, may not been. They didn't quite sound as like a coyote. But I'd hear a lot of them, and I wish I had the recordings. But like I say, I changed my phone. I lost everything because I'd stick my phone out on the hood of the truck, and then I'd get back in the truck. And
are you still working for them?
No, I haven't worked for them since January this year.
Okay. I was going to say, if you're still out there, you could get a digital recorder, and you could buy a lapel mic with about a 20-foot cord on it, and then take that lapel mic and just tape it to the top center of your cab. And then you can push record and just set in your truck, and you're still recording all the ambient noises that are on the outside. And,
right.
And that's what I've been trying to tell people, to get a digital recorder and start recording some of these sounds.
Yeah, they. I think they're now in Pennsylvania, is where I think they're at, because we were in Ohio and West Virginia, which St. Clairsville is only like 7 miles from there, West Virginia. I was only like, an hour away from the border. And I don't know. A couple of guys that was over in West Virginia said they had some strange things happen up in there, like porta potties being pushed over. But they had more people around them than what we did over where I was at. Because there was actually only 2 of us be out there for a couple months. And I don't know.
Did they have, when you're out, do these places typically have surveillance going on? I mean, any camera surveillance, or are they just using?
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious if these places have some type of 24-hour surveillance, camera surveillance on a pole or something like that in some of these places.
No, because, like I say, there was no lights, no power, nothing up there. It's just like roughing it. And, there wasn't even a electric pole or nothing around there, except for down the mountain. And that was about it.
And this was located in the Ohio area?
Yeah, just 25 to 30 miles south of there. I think kept coming up on my Google map, because when you first go down there, they'll pinpoint an area, and that's where you got to go to on your phones. And then you just follow that map or that directions. And it, like I say, it might be in the middle of nowhere. Nothing there, just whatever's in the timber. And there was a spot in that timber. I don't know how much they climb trees or they sit in trees, but there was a spot up there pretty close to where I sat, every once in a while it was like something was sitting in there. I mean, I don't know. I just know that it kept getting my attention, and that's about it. It was like a big, I want to describe it as a big nest, but I know it wasn't. It was just like 3 trees pushed together at the top, yeah.
Well, there have been occasions where people have seen these in trees, and they'll climb trees, and they've been in trees.
Huh.
So your instinct may be correct.
I mean, I can't say for sure. I just know that, like I say, there's this, from the military, I just have this, whatever you want to call it, and a lot of us do. We get an instinct where we just think or feel something, and that's what I would get at that tree when it started getting darker in the evening. And but down below it, they were. It was like a. I'll just say like a huge hillside, and then they come up another rise or hill on that side, which would have been to the northeast of me. Yeah, because they put like a big metal, not a thick metal, but a metal wall down in there. The pipeline did keep things from running on down, erosion.
Right.
And then beyond that, in them woods, it's so thick, it was pathetic. And that's where I'd see every so often something out of the corner of my eye. And I'd go over that way and start looking. But then I couldn't see anything, or anything moving. And but I know something was there because my first instinct would be I'd grab my pistol, sling it, and I'd go out there. And that's just the gut feeling you get because I don't know how to explain it. Just I know there was something there. But it was like it disappeared. It was like it either stood behind a tree, but whatever it was, I mean, some of the trees are small. I don't see how it could stand behind a tree unless it crouched down or something. I don't know.
Well, these creatures are masters of concealment, and they can use the woods absolutely to their advantage. They can be on their belly, they can crawl, they can climb a tree, they can turn sideways. They use the natural landscaping to their advantage in grasses, in leaves, you name it.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say that I know exactly what they do because I do not. But I'll just say that from a lot of the interviews, I really feel you could walk right by them and wouldn't even know it.
I believe that. I do believe that. Because just from what other people have told me that, and they don't like to talk about it much because they get the same thing. Oh, you're nuts. Something's wrong with you. You're having illusions or something.
Right. Well,
and I know this had drove me nuts for a long time about it because nobody would. I mean, not that I really need anybody to listen. But I just want to talk to somebody that has the same thoughts or the same incidents because it drives you nuts. Because then you start thinking, yeah, I am crazy.
Well, I think that's exactly, you hit on a point. I think, and if I don't think I've said this, but thank you for your service. I appreciate that. And I think we don't thank enough men and women serving our armed forces. So thank you so much.
And, thank you, sir.
And
for listening.
I think that it's very interesting, your story, because you have enough courage to state that you do suffer a little bit of PTSD, and there's varying levels of PTSD. And the post-traumatic, I'm working on some right now I'm going to be working on an additional degree to help people that call in. I'm going to start doing some counseling, but I need to. I'm going through some courses right now to get certified, additionally certified, because there's no such thing as a cryptid therapist. But
Right.
I'm working on that a little bit. Basically, how to cope. You'll never forget when you have a terrifying incident, because the brain doesn't work that way. It just catalogs it in a different place. And it's really hard, a lot of these men and women, because the PTSD that men and women have coming from overseas and abroad, in many respects, is really no different from the PTSD that they're encountering when they have a terrifying encounter.
Right.
Now, what it is, it's creating the PTSD is different, of course. You're dealing with war and life, and in this circumstance, you're dealing with something of the unknown that's not supposed to exist. When we go overseas, we know that there's bad people that want to shoot you. There's weaponry. There's different types of, and it's humans causing harm on yourself and us. Whereas when we go out into the woods and we have an encounter, many people that go out, first of all, have no clue that these creatures exist. Secondly, it's their mind, they want to tell someone, and that when they tell someone, they're telling a person that's never had an encounter, and then when they tell someone and they have people knock on their door telling them they didn't see what they saw and they need to shut up, now they're like, well, wait a minute, you're supposed to be helping me. I'm the one that saw this. How come you want me to keep it quiet? What's going on here? So
yeah.
It's very frustrating. It's very, they get angry and they're frustrated, and it creates more of a closed-in PTSD where they can't share because it's very difficult. I had a gentleman, the cousins that were attacked about a year ago, and that was episode 24 that we did, and the gentleman said, Lance, no one is believing me. My wife doesn't believe me, and they just think I've lost my marbles. And I said, well, look at it this way. You know what happened to you, and it happened all at once. You didn't know these creatures exist, and the same moment you also found out not only they exist, but they can cause harm to you. And then you had people telling you and threatening you, you better not tell anybody about this. So the questions just kept surmounting. You've got so many questions to talk to somebody, you just don't know what's going on. So you're overwhelmed. And then when you do share to someone like your spouse or you confide in a friend, you're trying to feed them an elephant with a teaspoon, and you want them to swallow all at once. That's too much. I said you got to feed them a little bite at a time, because if you feed them all at once, they're going to say, okay, Joe here's lost it. He's over the cuckoo's nest here. He's been, what medications are you on, Joe? Oh, you just had a stressful week, man. You need to calm down. So it's very, and when you do that and you patronize them, it's like, no, I'm telling you, I saw what I saw. It's very hard on these people. And so they just feel locked in, and then when they share for the first time to someone that instantly believes them. And you see, anytime you tell a story of an encounter, in my mind, there's two parts. The first part is acknowledging that these creatures exist. The second part is what happened to you, or what was the incident. If you can't get past part one and having this person believe that they exist, you'll never get to part two, and they'll just think you've lost it.
Right.
So that's where it's these shows, and why we started really doing, because there's people that are hurting. They just need to share. You may not be able to fill in all the gaps or the answers, but by just sharing, it will allow them to kind of move on, that they are not crazy, that it did happen, and that they're not alone. There are thousands of other people that's had maybe not the exact same thing happen, but very, very similar. And that makes them feel better. And of course, sometimes when someone's already suffering from PTSD, it makes it a little bit more challenging, of course. But there are people that have never been in battle that suffer, and that they don't know how to deal with it because they've never experienced anything like this before ever in their life.
Right.
And,
well, whenever I talk about this or think about it, the hair just stands up. And I didn't really say a lot or explain the whole situation of this incident. Now I'm going to start stuttering. But I was scared like a little kid that evening or night. It was actually probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, to want to know the truth, I think. But after that, it was like I was the prey and it was the predator, because I was there for 3 more days, and it was about my time up, and it was like things in the timber ramped up.
Really?
And I don't know. I just kept myself armed. I had my buoy, which I put in my back, and my 45, and my other pistol on the other side. And I got to where I'd only go so far close to the timber, and because I have to check to see if people are coming up there too. Because we had, but the people would usually show up like in the evening before anything, not like around 10. They wouldn't be around no more. Because they were protesters or they were trying to find something wrong. But it didn't happen every day. It might be a couple of days there's nobody that come around, or maybe a week nobody come around. But then every so often there would be. I was getting tears in my eyes. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Take your time.
But this, and like I say, I don't get scared much. I mean, I've faced some things in my lifetime, but this here, I don't know what it was, but it was like it would follow me. I said I'd heard sounds there in the timber and stuff, but the sounds I heard were like somebody or something walking, or maybe pacing once in a while or something, but it was like it was following me.
That would surprise me.
It really ate me up. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I just never experienced anything like that. I mean, I have, but it was people.
Yeah, like I said, it was people that what people look like. A person is a person, whether they're bad, good, or indifferent, right? A human is a human. And, humans all look different. We have different colors, and our hair looks different and everything, and different personalities and tendencies. But something like this shakes people to the core. And, I tell people, especially men, there's nothing about facing these creatures, and there's nothing about seeing one or that makes you any more or less of a man if it puts the fear of God in you. If you're scared, if you're not scared, there's probably something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. If you're not scared and you don't have a little bit of agitation and anxiety, if you encounter something that is truly cryptid in nature, there's something, all that stuff is in the movies.
Yeah.
To be the bad guy and the hero and I'm not afraid of anything, phooey. That's the movies. A real person that's got some courage and grit can revert to being downright plumb scared.
Right.
And there's nothing, and it has nothing to do with being a man or not a man. That's nothing to do with it. It's just,
but to me, this is like unnatural. I mean, it just, I don't know if it has a way to emit or, I don't know.
I think there is something that you're hitting on that we don't know. I know that in a lot of these encounters, people will say they project a sound that is what's called an infrasound, or a sound wave that they can project either vocally, that can it depends who you talk to and which encounters, but that can emit a vibration that can evoke fear in us.
Yeah.
I mean, we know sound waves can do different things to our body, good or bad. I mean, we've known about that for years and years and years. Even the Cold War, having during the wall falling in Russia and all that. I mean, there's and when Germany, I mean, they were experimenting with sound and all kinds of things that are just bizarre. But we know sound it can be for good or it can be for bad. So,
right.
With that being said, is it plausible, remotely plausible, that a sound wave emitted from a creature we have really no idea can cause more fear or anxiety, or cause us to be kind of in a hypnotic state? It's likely. It's very likely.
Very likely, you think? I mean, or do you think it's just the not knowing, or the what's the word I'm looking for? The like I said before, it's just unreal, or unnatural, or what do you want to call it?
I think it's a little bit of everything, possibly. It'd probably be hard.
You don't know what it is.
Well, that's it. We're the human mind. We always fear what we don't understand or don't know about. I mean, that's everybody. I mean, we always fear the possibility of something that might occur and never does, and we always fear the unknown. That's just humankind, and that's a natural tendency. So it's really hard to work against the natural human tendency of being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And so it actually takes practice. And so, but just because you can get comfortable at an uncomfortable situation, for instance, men and women in the military, where they through a lot of boot camp training and they kind of break you down physically, mentally, emotionally, then build you back up.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's still, in my mind, again, I'm just putting things here the best I can, is together, is that I don't think it's still good enough criteria to say, well, I can handle every situation, especially with these cryptids, because it's a whole different duck here. And so it really is. And it's really hard to know how a person's going to behave in a situation when you know something very unnatural is tailing you or eyeballing you, or you just get this sense innately that something's not right here. Something living is watching me. It's stalking me. I mean, that's a really uncomfortable, very scary moment when you come to grips with that, and everybody's going to behave different. And like I said, if a person doesn't have a fear of that, there's something, you're unplugged from the world. There's something not right.
I know there's a couple times I felt like just turning around and running into it. I mean, you know what I mean? Just charge where the sound came from just to get it over with.
Yeah.
Because I figured it was going to have me anyway, whatever it was. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but there's a point where you get so scared you kind of get an anger.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it is. And that's just the way a couple times I felt, but never did because I was too damn scared.
Right. What part of your requirement when you were working, I think you already said it, you had to get out and walk around the equipment?
Yeah.
How often did you have to do that?
Pretty much every hour, by the hour, because we reported in hourly. Every hour we had to make a check-in, a report our status, and whatnot. If anything happened, something going on, that I'd never report, though. I'd never tell them nothing about that. I've had a few guys, I mean, I don't know how big Bigfoot is or whatever in Pennsylvania, but I know a couple guys out there said they've heard some strange things and things go on. that work for the. But
so
yeah,
would there be time? I mean, I know what I'm sure that when this started happening and it started ramping up, did you just absolutely hate wanting to get out of your truck and go walk around?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple times I just felt like sticking my pistol out the door window and fire a shot and then get out, just to see if I scared whatever away.
Right.
But I never did that. But I wouldn't walk as far. My distances, which I had a long distance to walk, kept getting shorter and shorter on me. In other words, I wouldn't go as far, especially when I'd go down in the holler. And then there was a cliff on the other side, and I'd just go so far, and about every night my walk would get shorter.
Yeah, I'm sure it would, and I don't blame you one bit either. I mean, I can't even imagine, having that happen, and you're like, oh gosh, I got to do this all night tonight, and
yeah.
It was probably one of those moments when your day was off on that last, that last hour of the last day. You were like, oh, thank God, So
yeah, it was over then.
So there was no other guys that were also that would share with you any oddities?
Well, one guy started telling me something one morning when he came to relieve me, something that happened during the day, but then he, I don't know, he got quiet about it. Said, oh, you wouldn't believe it anyway, and then he went and got in his truck, and that was about it. I mean, there's been a few mentioned things out in Pennsylvania way, and let's see. It seemed like over in West Virginia, there's a spot. They'd said, the guy who used to be my captain had said something. But it was just, I don't know, he had some items disappear in the middle of the night. He was out in the middle of sticks, nowhere. But that's about it that I could think of. I mean, there was pipeliners who's been all across the country, and they've talked about things. Some out of Texas, some out of Oklahoma, Arkansas. One guy lives down, young kid, lived down on, is it Texarkana? Something like that.
Oh, okay.
He talked about some things that went on, like, I don't know, animals disappear. People talked about things they've seen, and he's talked about things he's heard, but he never did ever tell me anything about seeing anything. But he knows they were down there. And I lived in, where was it? Paragould, Arkansas. That's about 50 miles north or south, or north of Jonesboro, Arkansas. I remember people when I was about 15, because I got my driver's license, had talked about things they've seen walk down the roads down by these quarries just south of Paragould. I don't even remember what highway that was. And that's about it that I know of.
Wow.
I mean, there's things all over that I recall people telling me.
Sure. Well, and that just kind of expands the concept that it's just not, when people ask me, well, where can I go Bigfooting at in Oklahoma? And I'm saying, yeah, put a map on a wall and throw a dart. And
yeah.
I mean, they're just not located in one area, and you're going to find, that one in Oklahoma. There's a lot more than one. And you're, if you hit it in the downtown metro area, it's probably going to be safe to say they're not there. But any areas outside of that where, you have open plains or woods, creeks, rivers, lakes, game, habitats, anything like that. I mean, people are surprised that they'll see these things on the open prairie, crossing roads.
Yeah. What color eyes do you think they have? Red?
Well,
or green?
It probably varies. I'm sure that there is a common color in the genetic pool, but I've heard people say browns, a lot of browns, dark browns, black. But I find it hard to say black. I think black is when it's at night, and they don't see they don't see the sclera of the eye, which is the white part of the eye. Most people can't see that the iris, which gives the color of the eye. So they'll just say it looked all black, when actually it's probably more of a brown. The pupil, and I imagine that the pupils and the iris are quite large. I'm just guessing here, but I'm saying they probably have eyes like the size of a racquetball, and I think they can see much better than us at night. So their rods and cones are made differently, and that back of that retina is made differently. I think that their eye colors can vary from brown. Now, some people say at night they're glowing red or this or that, and I'm going to say I'm not entirely sure of that, but that there might be some fluorescency or some type of fluorescent retinal pigment. Now, there is some tissue back behind the retina that improves the reflectivity of light. It's kind of like a thermal camera that gathers the light, like a germanium lens that gathers light. It's very similar to that in the back. And so that reflectivity may give the look of the eyes glowing when it's just reflecting the light back. So and that's just my thoughts on that. Otherwise, I'm going to say in general, I would say most of the eyes are going to be brown in color, is what I'm saying. But could there be variances? Sure, absolutely. I just don't know what those would be.
I remember at night, I don't remember how many years, 4 years ago maybe, 3, over by Jerseyville, Illinois. There's a guy that swears, I don't remember his name, but he hunts for Bigfoot over there, and he swears it's there. It's an area where you got the river bottoms, Illinois River and whatnot,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of cliffs. But I remember one night there was a group of us, and we flashed the light up on this cliff area, and there was green eyes up there. And it was like it set down, like I mean, you know how you can look at or kind of tell, well, you got the eye shine, which were wide apart, but kind of the motion of the eyes, how when somebody sits down, do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
But it was almost like a human sat down up on that bluff, watching them eyes shine, and then get up and move on. That's why I was asking about the eye color. But there's a fellow that swears Bigfoot or Sasquatch lives in that area. And evidently he's found a lot of different things. I don't remember his name. I don't even remember if he's alive now. I know there's a lot of people talk about it over in that area. It's a little ways from me. It's northwest of Alton, Illinois, up along the river areas, past Brighton and whatnot. But that's why I asked about that, because for some reason that popped in my head. I was just thinking about, because we were in the area and we were at a historic site, and it was that night, and we flashed the light up there and seen that, because we thought, now what is that? Or who is that? Or, not who, because their eyes ain't going to glow in the flashlight or the light. But anyway, that's why I thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, their eyes are definitely going to reflect variances in color, probably depending on the angle that our lights, whether it's an LED light we're shining on them or the old lights that we used to have with the batteries, those things were just horrible now compared to the LEDs.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm sure the light reflectivity makes the color different, and depending on the angle and the type of light, and it may vary on a genetic level, to each of these creatures. So it's really that's a great question. It's just hard to know until we get to know more about these creatures and their anatomical features. We just know so very little.
Right. I know there's I don't know. I just know there's different things that I've been trying to find out about them, and I don't really understand, or some things I think, well, yeah, that kind of sounds like what was out in Ohio. That I don't know. I don't know where to go from here on this now.
Well, no, that's okay. It's just, I'm always curious of people's perspective, what happened,
right,
and how do they feel now? So, I guess and I appreciate your courage and being very open and honest, and because there's people that will listen that will say, that's the way I felt. That's exactly how I felt. Maybe, and people feel better when you do share. It doesn't solve everything, but just sharing in nature. I mean, why do we have all these associations and groups for people trying to stop smoking or drinking, or is because you feel better. It's good medicine to share, but it's even better medicine to share with people that have had very similar experiences and they know you're not crazy, because they've been told the same thing, and so we can all relate together. We could say, yeah, that happened to me too. You got told the same thing? Yep. I know what you're talking about. I know what kind of fear you're talking about. I know. And so you just feel like you're not alone.
Yeah. Does it make you want to go out there more and look for it?
Yes. It's a very strange compulsion. It's almost like it's obsessive compulsive disorder, so to speak, but not exactly. In other words, when someone has an experience, what you find is they may be frightened beyond what they've ever felt before, but then after things settle down and the dust settles down, then what starts filling in this fight or flight mode void is an obsession. I got to know more. I got to understand what the heck I saw. Why did it do what it did? How come there's people trying to cover this darn thing up after I was trying to tell them what I saw? Why am I angry that people don't believe me? So there's that void starts being filled with obsession, and it changes people's lives. And I've talked to quite a few people that their lives have been changed in that it just is not an incident that happened. Sometimes it affects their relationships with their spouse. It affects their job. It affects their sleep habits. I mean, and so what are we talking about here is it sounds like a PTSD from people coming back from overseas, right?
Right.
And so that's what these people are also experiencing. So when you have such a fear component, a deep neurologic, emotional component, it's a deep set neurological response. In other words, it doesn't take much to bring it back up to the surface. And so that's why when people retell the story, they revert right back to that moment and they start getting emotional again, is because it had such a profound impact. And it still is there. Even if it occurred 10, 15, 25 years ago, it put them right back. And it leads a lot of people on this quest and obsessiveness, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why we started out doing the show. It was kind of therapy for my brothers and I to share a little bit, but then it evolved into something else where it became therapy for other people. And,
I see.
And so it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to experience it all together. And it's just, and we couldn't get enough of it. And we had questions. And so by doing the show, it actually, with every, no matter how minor or how intense an encounter is, we learn more and more and more about the characteristics and tendencies of these beings, if you will. And so we all learn together. And I think that there is a large number of people that will listen pure for, entertainment value, but there is also a percentage of people that will listen because they've had an encounter that they can't explain and they want to know more.
Well, watching your shows got me to bring it out more, because I got to where I shut up about it because everybody, they all thought I was nuts when I came back from the Army anyway. But, talking to you about it has made a difference with me in the few moments I've talked to you about it.
Good.
I know I quit deer hunting because I got to where I was like on patrol again since that incident.
I was going to ask you if there's anything that you would normally do that you don't now because of that incident. So you don't.
Yeah, deer. I don't squirrel or deer hunt because I think I have to be on patrol. Because of it may pop up. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, and some people don't want to do anything remotely closely associated with the moment that they had when they encountered these beings. So if it's out in the woods, some people never go back. If they were deer hunting and they encountered this, they never go deer hunting. If they were on a stroll or a hike in a city park and they saw something that came out and yelled, they don't want to go to the city park. So I don't blame them for that. It's just that it's not that they don't want to have any triggers to something that was so terrifying. They just don't want to have that feeling, and they don't want to live that way.
Right.
So they don't get around trigger moments, if you will. And I can't blame them for that. I really can't. Fear is something so personal, so indescribable. Everybody's going to react different, and it depends on the kind of fear. You said it earlier. I think it really depends on the kind of fear, and if these things can evoke even more fear to the point where it's indescribable, where you're almost at the point of relieving your bladder. I mean, it's just that deep, that emotionally deep, that it's just an indescribable emotion that you can't tell people you had to be there. And that's why people don't want to talk about it, because it frightens them so much that they're just worried what people are going to think. But by talking about it, it just brings all that raw emotion back up.
Right. I go back in the timber, but I don't hunt. I don't, when I go, I'm basically loaded for elephant, and it's like being on patrol because I want to find the things I've seen out here in the timber. Like I told you earlier about the trees being snapped over. There's another place they call just west of where I live.
Okay.
And there's a lot of tree snaps and bent over trees and things that just don't look natural, like many limbs stacked up around a tree. Kind of like you try to make a shelter or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's down in the bottom of the tree. And even other people pointed this out to me, saying, hey, something don't look right here. What do you think done that? Do you think there's kids down here? And we know there's no kids down there because for a few miles around, nobody lives, and a lot of times it gets flooded out. and it's just a kind of a desolate little place, area. Ground's clear in there, all dirt, no grass. Like I say, a lot of trees snapped over. I remember one night we used to camp down there. This has been back in the, not long after, when I got out of the Army, I lived in the woods probably 2 years, something like that. And anyway, something happened one night, and we're not sure what happened because my buddy was kind of asleep a little bit away from us, but he come running through there with a shotgun. He said he heard the damnedest noise, and whatever it was, he said it was big or whatever. I don't know how he come out of that bunk with that shotgun, but he did. Come right out of there. And we all laughed at him. Weren't sure,
Sure.
what it was or anything, but it scared him, whatever it was, because he was, I don't know, we were on about 5 acres there. He was probably, where was he? He was probably, well, he wasn't all that far away from us, but he was a good spell from us. Because where we had our big fire, we had these cabins built, and then these, like, tents set up. And he used to, a lot of times he'd get drunk, and he'd just take a hammock and put across between two trees and lay there with his shotgun. And he'd come flying up out of that thing, and he was white as a ghost. I don't know what got to him, but something did down in there. And it's been quite a few years ago. I just thought of that.
There's no telling, and there's so many stories that you and I will never hear because people it's too fearful to bring up what they saw, and they're when they get ready to bring it up, they're still questioning themselves. Did I actually see what I saw? And then they start questioning, am I hallucinating? Did I just see what it did? What? And so their mind is racing to come to grips on, is this, fiction or nonfiction? What's going on here? And of course, it makes it easier if you had a person with you that saw it. That way you can turn around and say, did you just see what I saw? Yes, I did. And so you can kind of rely on each other and banter back like, what the heck? So you can, it makes it a little bit better. But my brother, when he saw his encounter, the buddy that's with him, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's clammed up.
Huh.
He doesn't want to talk about it because to talk about it means that we saw something real.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to discuss it in the story. So,
yeah, I've ran into people like that around the lake. And there's a lot of timber down there, and then Shawnee National Forest. If you say something about it, they'll look at you like you get the impression that they've had an incident, but they ain't saying it.
See?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
it's like they almost want to agree with you, but they won't.
Yeah. And so there's so many stories out there and encounters that we'll never ever hear, and it'll go to people's graves. And I don't blame them. First of all, I can understand why they feel the way they feel and why they don't want to share it, and I respect that. But on the other hand, I wish they would share, and I wish they'd call us so they can be in an environment that they know that will keep, confidentiality is huge with us. If they would at least share a little bit, it'll make themselves feel much, much better, and they can call us anytime. And that it doesn't seem so now, but by sharing, it's very healthy. You don't want to leave that bottled up inside you, and it has affected people, their lives. So, but like I said, when you share and you start getting it off your chest and things kind of emotionally calm down, you start this obsession like, I got to know more. I got to figure out what this is. What? How long has it been? And some people instantly start connecting the dots where they have ignored it in the past as just happenstance. Now, when they see this creature, they're like, oh, I wonder if that's been going on since as a kid. That explains that, and that explains this incident, and why the apple tree was all gone by we never got any apples, or why that lawnmower was turned upside down. We couldn't figure out why. And I mean, they start, all these things come flooding back, and they start connecting the dots all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, that's something kind of like what I wanted to say earlier, because when I was a kid, I remember some incidents, because I used to run the Mississippi River down in the bottoms, and it was all timber, just, it's all built up now, I think. But I was born, lived in but we'd always run down to Olin, Madison, which is where they, make a lot of ammunition and stuff over at East Alton. And we'd get down in the bottoms, and we'd find structures and stuff built down there we couldn't figure out, as a kid. You still know enough that, like different things, I don't know, like a bunch of logs lined up on the ground. And, how'd I put it? Kind of like a bedding, I guess. But we'd find stuff down there. Find all kinds of built up stuff in trees and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't know what it was.
Right. You didn't put it together then. You just kind of go, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But it was right out there on the Mississippi River in these timbers, and you'd find a spot almost like where, I'll just say kind of like hogs rooted. And it'd be a clear round spot. And sometimes you think, oh, somebody down here camping, but there's no fire, nothing from fire or anything. And you just wonder what that stuff came from. And I don't know. You just start thinking about stuff as growing up, things you've seen or came across.
Sure. And that's how, a lot of people to this right now that'll listen to this show, is that they may have not had an encounter or a moment that terrified them, but there's been a lot of little things that make you go, huh, that has been going on since childhood around the family home or the homestead or a grandparent's home or whatnot, and things that just didn't add up. Why was there a chicken missing every week during the summer of '68 when there was no blood, no feathers, no nothing? Why was there a bag of feed stole every month out of the barn, and there was no feed kernels around, there was no paper bag? Why was there sounds, that sound like a hoot owl when there's no trees around? And no barn. And so why was there stacks of rocks outside the front door? Why was there timber cut from that barn we were building? How come these 2x6s and 2x4s are stacked up outside? And so just odd things that you kind of look at. Nothing was stolen, nothing was destroyed, but yet you look at something and you go, oh, you just kind of put it off. It's too time consuming to think of a logical explanation, and since it's not logical or unlogical of why something happened or why it's missing, you just kind of go, I don't have time for this, and so you just go on, and that happens a lot, I'm sure, and until someone has an event happen, they just will never connect the dots. And that's just the way it is, man. But there's a lot of that. Now, I'm not saying that people can't come on your property and steal stuff and destroy stuff, and that happens, unfortunately, a lot. So not everything is a cryptid encounter, but there are there are moments where it is, but people just don't look at that.
But you just tripped a trigger. And where I lived over by Bethel, the old. And I told you about. We used to run down in their timber and ammo bunkers.
Yes.
As kids, there was a family. Now that I think about it, lived right around the corner from us, and behind them was, which owned the lumber yard and hardware store there, and it was all timber. We made nothing but motorcycle and bike trails out of it. Well, one winter, it was snowing and whatnot, and they had tracks in the yard they found. But all I can remember is the girl's name. She had red hair, and her name was Rainey. And I don't remember the last name, but they said Monkey Man came up on their back side of their house. And they said it was a huge monkey. And then the next day we seen the tracks and stuff, what was left of them in the snow. But right behind them was where that property was. And there was all timber in there. And the only spot there in town where there was that much timber that went across 111 into more timber and down to the Mississippi. I remember that now. They said Monkey Man because they had a patio door and a concrete right outside there. And that was back in 1970, 72, 73. That was a long time ago.
So they must have they saw something then.
Yeah, they saw something, and then they had the tracks in the backyard, and they called it Monkey Man. They'd come up, I guess, out of the timber or something. I'd forgotten all about that. That was a long time ago. Wow.
Well,
that'd been years ago. Like I say, back around 72, 73.
Well, there's definitely a lot more sightings now. You know, it's kind of an explosion of sightings, and now I don't know if it's because of their proliferation, their breeding, or what, but there's just sightings. You know, I always say that even in our state of Oklahoma, every night there's going to be dozens of people have an encounter that they couldn't explain every night. Our hopes is that we can be a group that they can trust to call upon, so we can help them understand what it was they saw and find out kind of what the habits were or what did they do, and then we can go from there and just, you know, what's the background? What do they know about their belief in Bigfoot prior to and now? All of that really lends a story of the context of everything. And, you know, so every night there's encounters always going on somewhere across the U.S. every night.
Yeah, I believe that. That I do. But I hate to take off on you, but I got to...
No, I understand. It's about time here, too. We've been on now for about 2 hours, so I appreciate your time, your courage coming forward, your commitment and service to our country. And I'm very honored that you would think of us and share your encounter with us. And if you ever just want to talk anytime, you can. Be more than happy. You don't have to make everything a show. If anything comes across out your way, I just appreciate. Just give us a call. This is my cell phone here.
Oh, okay.
So you can just put Lance Hightower in that, and then give me a little time to call you back. But otherwise, it's been an honor and a privilege, and just thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that.
And I thank you for your time, sir. You know, I had a Colonel Hightower.
Really?
I respected very much at Fort Carson. Yeah. Respected that man a lot. Yeah.
Interesting.
But, I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Why do you think, I mean, if they're so huge and whatnot, why do you think they like that? How come he didn't make his presence known to me except for being there in the timber? Why not stepping out or
I think, and again, this is just me kind of postulating, kind of putting things together, just trying to understand the best I can from their circumstance. I think there is a level of fear they have of us, and I think this one may have seen your firearm and your knife, and they know, in my mind, they know what that is. They know that if you use that on them, it could, I don't know if they understand the concept of kill, but I think to a certain degree, whatever they call it, I think they do. And so I think seeing you with a sidearm and a knife, that he was kept keeping his distance, and he was basically, there was probably, I say he, I don't know that. There may have been more than one, too, because usually where there's one, there's others. That's my feeling.
Right.
That's my feeling there, too. I think.
You think that's in their instinct from ancestry about weapons?
Well, I think that they have, it could be, but I think they've been shot at so much. I think they communicate to, since they were young, by their parents, that you don't want to be near a human that has that.
I see.
So I think it's just taught to them. I think that they have witnessed hunters killing hogs and deer and bear, and that the bear never comes alive again, and the deer isn't alive again. So I think they understand the concept of death. Maybe not the same way as humans, but in some way. And I think that it may have seen this on you in your patrol, and that it knows not to get in eyesight of you, so it stays at bay. But I think that they view us as being something of curiosity, and I think that also this was an area that it moved in quite often, whether it's hunting, whether it's looking for a mate, I don't know. But I think it didn't obviously want you there, and it was agitated at the same time, and it was trying to provoke you to leave, but at the same time, it did not want to show itself because of what it knew you had or possessed.
I see.
That is just my 2 cents there.
Well, I thank you again, sir, for your time, and I respect what you do, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I hope in some small way I was helped a little bit, and you're very, very welcome. I appreciate you.
Well, I thank you, sir.
All right. Take care and have a great day, and we'll talk here soon.
All right, you too, and be safe.
I shall. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.